Southwest Florida, you just don't know how thrilled I am to come to you at the conclusion of the virtual symposium, Racism, Justice, and the Christian Church. I've been around a long time, seen a million faces, done a lot of things, but I think nothing really is going to, punctuate my resume of over 25,000 shows. Then coming to these symposiums and seeing all of this energy and learning so much and getting to be around such high-end quality people is just, I never talk about this on television, just another interview, but this is not the case. We are here concluding on the symposium that was just fantastic. I encourage everybody to go to Mount Hermon Ministries Facebook page, their YouTube channel. Go to E-Gate, how you pronounce it? Agape.
Followers of Christ Fellowship.
Followers of Christ. We're going to get to all of that. And just everybody, just share on our pages. Let's get right to it. I had the thrill to be the media sponsor of the television show. Me as an individual, I was the host. It's hard to separate the two. Lee Pitts Live and Lee Pitts, they're basically the same thing. And we had a great time. So let's kind of talk about what happened there. Get to meet these fine ministers. Just get your name, your church, and your worship hours.
Dr. Phil Phillips, pastor of Agape Christian Fellowship Church over on Buckingham Road. We're meeting exclusively virtually now at 9 o'clock and at 11 o'clock on Sundays, and Tuesday nights we have Bible study at 7:30.
Okay, so you're still staying virtual
until
virtual. It's safe. Okay?
Yes.
I'm Dr. Rickey Anderson, founder and pastor of Followers of Christ Fellowship Ministry, and all of our ministry is virtual as well.
Okay.
Yes, matter of fact, 11 o'clock, Facebook, and you can hear me at 10 o'clock on 93.3 FM.
Radio.
Yes, sir.
Right. Because I see you on Sundays. I see all of you. I come just strolling through. I get a little bit of you. You guys are doing such a great job. Looks like your lighting and everything is good now. You're investing.
I got lighting just like you.
Oh, you got that kind? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look good standing up there. Was it called a mortgage burning?
Yes.
That you invited me to?
Mortgage burning.
Right, because sometimes I get it wrong. I think I say something else was burning. But, man, that was so much fun to come to that mortgage burning. Every time I see you, I think about that mortgage burning because I had never been to a mortgage burning. So thanks for bringing me out there, and people will get to know that I actually was in the pulpit, right?
Yes, you were, yes.
I'll share this with you guys as a layman who comes in here and try to navigate without sounding like I know anything. My mom wanted me to be a minister. So when she sees this, she's always like, now you're in place, now you're in place. Then I saw her send her some video of you letting me get in your pulpit. Oh, he's in the pulpit. I'm so proud of you. That little TV show, no, you need to be a minister. You should have been a minister, because my mom is raised me up deep into the church. And she said, I wanted one of my kids. Like when we'd be sitting around, Pastor, like 7 of us, and we'd be having, back in the day when you sat around, the whole family sat around to eat, right? And so I was the next to the youngest. And my mom would be looking around the table on Sunday. She's raising 7 kids by herself in the project. She would always look around, I want one of my children to be a minister. And then she would stare at me, and I'm like over there 7 years old, like, not me, all without at me. So it's always cool to look back at those great days. And then when I come in here and we start unpacking some things that take us back in time, in history, and one of the things I posed to the other pastors, and I want to pose it to you guys as we have this conversation, is imagine that 100 years from now, that there are people looking at this interview, just like we look at old interviews in black and white from the past. We see Dr. King, we see Malcolm X, we hear from what's the West Indian guy name who was a real popular revolutionist, Marcus Garvey. And we see all that in the past. They don't know we're looking at them.
Right.
We just think that's like, they just doing what they're doing. Congressman John Lewis and all, they're doing what they're doing. And we're looking at them now. So I want you guys to think about this as we have this conversation, is that people in the future are going to be looking at this now and what we were doing at this moment in history. We are a part of this moment in history, 2020. People in the future, we're thinking about you, looking at our clothes, saying, man, they dressed like that back then. Yeah, that's the way we dressed back then. Okay? We won't know it, but it's going to happen. It's going to be in perpetuity, and social media technology allows that. So having said that, when people look at us in the future, Dr. Phil, 100 years from now, they will have context of what happened about 60 years ago, 50, 60 years ago with the civil rights movement. They will have context of what happened during Jim Crow, what happened during slavery, and all of that up until now. And we're free and all of that now. And we're having these types of discussions with white ministers and panel discussion, and we're focusing on the gospel in the church. What do you hope that they will be taking from our conversation?
Well, first, I hope that they will take that there was a challenge that was presented, and there were men who were brave enough to rise up to the challenge and to lay the foundation for the conversation they're having when they're actually watching this. Because I think every generation is called to pay it forward. And so that's what I hope that they'll see was that there was a challenge and that there were people who were willing to rise up even though it was inconvenient, but they rose up to the challenge to lay the groundwork for the future.
Pastor Anderson, Dr. Anderson, talking to the people in the future, tell them how do we get to this moment in this time as it relates to what's happening in society right now, and that's why we're having this conversation.
Well, we're having this conversation because of what happened to George Floyd, who was actually murdered by a police officer who put his knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds while the world watched, because it was videoed by a young lady using her cell phone, and she posted it, and it went viral. At that point, there was an uproar because it was basically racism was being seen where it has been going on for years and years and years, but we didn't see it because there was no one there to film it. So that's what brought us to where we are now.
Describe the races of the people. Again, 100 years from now, they're going to be looking it up in their books. They're going to be Googling whatever technology is. Describe the races of that particular incident. George Floyd is African American
descent, and the police officer was Caucasian or white.
Now, 100 years from now, this makes it interesting. 100 years from now, should they be looking at this and saying those types of things were going on back then? Do you think we would have passed this? These types of things won't be happening 100 years from now? Because we have the perspective of looking back 100 years and saying, hey, things are still going on right now in 2020.
That's the aspiration.
It'll be 100 years from now will be what? 2120?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
That's the aspiration. I don't think you can totally eradicate something that only Jesus can eradicate, which is the sinfulness of man. But our hope is that it will be so minimum that this will just be a reference point to when we begin to minimize it and reduce it significantly. And that is the hope and the prayer that the generation that's coming after us will be closer to what we saw in this moment. That's the hope.
That would be your greats looking at us 100 years from now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you think things will be totally different 100 years from now?
I do, because every generation gets a little better. For instance, when I look at my parents, things are a little better for me than it was for my parents. When I look at my children, things are a little better for my children than it was for me. So I believe that they will look at it, they will learn from it. And as Dr. Field said, it's going to be around. It's going to be around. They're going to know it happened 100 years prior, and now we're still seeing it 100 years later. Because what we're dealing with now, it has been around good 400 years or plus. Okay, so it's not going to go away, and they're going to acknowledge the fact that we fought back today, and they will have to fight during their time
to take it forward.
Yes.
They will see great-great-granddad was active.
Right.
He spoke out. He didn't sit on the sideline.
Right.
That would be great-great-granddad, Dr. Phillips as well. They see your pictures hanging in the kitchen, your kids, your relatives. They talk about you. When they talk about you at this moment, what do you want them to be saying about you as a pastor in 2020?
Well, you added a whole layer with the pastor thing. I hope that they will say that I led with courage, I led with conviction, and I left footprints for them to follow. That is, if I can achieve that end, I think I have succeeded, because it's really not about what you say, it's what you leave behind for the next generation that's coming. So I hope I can leave a legacy of bravery for the next generation.
Okay, this symposium here on August 19, 2020 was Racism, Justice, the Christian Church. Do you think that we accomplished, we being all of us, all different races, did we accomplish as a kickoff? Couldn't accomplish everything here in 2020. Did we accomplish what we set out to do tonight in the 2 hours?
Oh, I definitely think once you begin a movement, you've been successful. And so it's too big to accomplish within the scope of 2 hours. But I think we laid some tracks on which we can run the train. Mm-hmm. And if we can continue laying those tracks even further, I think we will see the fruit of this eventually. So I think putting the seed in the mind of people that there is an issue, the church can no longer be silent because silence is no longer an option. I think what we've done, if we said to people, like, there is a group of men who's willing to say, let's start a conversation and let's see where it goes from there.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Anderson, we had, I never really used the word Caucasian. I hear you guys using Caucasian, so I end up saying it. But we had white ministers who were really a part of this discussion. They weren't potted plants. They were speaking up. And what do you have to say about them coming here, still with the predominantly black community, all of us mostly black up there, and speaking their piece?
Well, that's a bold move.
Mm-hmm.
It's a move of courage, because it's kind of like I've heard one of the ladies of life say, my white privileges. I gotta stop using that, and I gotta step up and speak against the racial injustice and the injustice that's being done to other races. And so for a Caucasian, and I think one of them were Hispanic, to come to a predominantly black neighborhood on a Wednesday night and speak like they spoke, that's courage. I feel that there's a passion. And I also believe that they were led by the Spirit of God to be a part of the symposium. Just
for our people who are looking at this in the future, and certainly people are looking at this in the present and understanding that we're projecting into the future in 2120, 100 years from now. We are in Dunbar community in the city of Fort Myers. You are welcome to come, go down to wherever you are in the world and you're watching this, go to the Dunbar community in the city of Fort Myers in the state of Florida, in the southwest part of it. Take a look around and see what it looks like compared to what it looks like to us today and what's going on in society. Pastor Phil, tell the people in the future, 100 years from now, what's going on in society here today, particularly as it relates to black people in Fort Myers, in this predominantly black community, and how we're feeling about things.
Well, if I could repeat the words of the preacher who said, there's nothing new under the sun. Mm-hmm. And so we live here in Southwest Florida, which, by the way, was one of the last places to be desegregated. So we are in a city where racism was prevalent and still is prevalent.
Right.
And so I think for those of us who are part of the church, we are fighting against something that's been embedded in the culture. Mm-hmm. And we are trying to affect and edit the narrative. Mm-hmm. I don't think we'll ever change the narrative completely, but we can edit the narrative to the point where it looks more like what Jesus wants it to look like, which is an inclusive, multicultural, multiracial community. So Southwest Florida is a beautiful place to live. Mm-hmm. It's a painful place to experience life. Mm-hmm. Well, let me break the difference by that. Beautiful in the terms of the landscape and the topography. Painful in the culture and the mentality that exists within the ethos of the community. But I think 100 years from now, I hope that City Hall will look different. Mm-hmm. Our police department will look different. Our sheriff department will look different. And they will know that there were men who stood up, men like us, Dr. Glover, who stood up and said, we're going to affect change and begin to edit the narrative.
Mm-hmm. Pastor Anderson and Dr. Phil, both of y'all doctors. I just want to make sure I give you your doctor title. Both of you seem to have a certain sense of optimism about the future. Does that have a lot to do with the gospel, your Christian faith? Or you as an individual always, you optimistic anyway?
Well, I'm optimistic anyway, because I believe that if you're not optimistic, you just lay down and just slide. You got to be optimistic that there are going to be some changes. Not going to be able to make, as Dr. Phil said, make all of the changes, but at least it's kind of like cutting down a tree. I might not be able to cut the whole tree down, but I do want to put a dent in it. I want to leave a mark in it that I started it. So that's what we're doing here. We're starting something that I believe needs to be carried on for years to come.
Dr. Phil, you said something up there that I thought was really interesting. On the people, again, we're talking in the future, they'll be looking back at the great dad, Dr. Phil. There was a man on television during this period named Dr. Phil who was white. And you talked about going to speak. I want you to say that on camera now so we can have it. Tell that story and how the response from the audience was.
Well, the organizer of the event played off of my name, Dr. Phil, and with the notoriety of the other Dr. Phil, and they never put my last name. They just put Dr. Phil, who was a white man. And so it was a conference about growth and development. It was a leadership conference. And so automatically associated, well, if there's a leadership conference, they're having Dr. Phil because he is entitled to be here because he's known to help people. And so here I am, they introduced me, and this lady, she literally was beat red when she noticed that it wasn't the Dr. Phil on television, that it was another Dr. Phil. And I could see in her face there was a moment of disappointment.
Okay.
For about maybe 3 minutes until I started my talk. And all of a sudden she pulled out her notepad and she was taking notes profusely. So all of a sudden now, what was a presupposition that this guy probably doesn't have anything to say became a connection with me to the point where she took some photos with me afterwards and she got a couple of my books. So again, it was that preconceived notion that a black man can't carry certain type of weight until I hear him speak. So I get that all the time, Lee. I get that all the time. I get a chance of speaking to a lot of predominantly white audiences because of some of my connections. And I get this all the time where they don't expect, and most people don't know, I am of Haitian descent. So my parents are from Haiti. I was born in the Bahamas. I grew up here. And so what I'll get oftentimes is, you don't sound Haitian. And I'm like, what does Haitian sound like? Can you explain that to me? Well, you don't have an accent. I said, well, who told you every Haitian has an accent? So is that passive racism that if you are not from here, then you are not supposed to sound like this? I got it in the school where I went to in Minnesota for my doctorate degree. So I'm so used to it by now, I'm waiting for it to come.
One of the things that I found interesting too, moderating it as a layman.
Yeah.
And I think by me being a layman, I'm watching and observing. I'm doing my job, but I'm also trying to speak for the regular person. And then I get you guys to talk about certain things that y'all may not have talked about. But one of the things I said was, and I heard a big giggle come from you, Dr. Anderson. I said, and you can see the white pastors seemed like they had to think about this for a minute. I knew you guys didn't really have to think about it, but I said, your people at your church are seeing you here talking about these things right now. They're probably hearing you say things that they didn't know that you were thinking or you felt. And I heard you kind of laugh about that. Go internally when I posed that question. They out in public, like on Front Street.
Yeah, because, to be in an environment like we're in tonight, and for it to be out on Facebook and, YouTube, I mean, everybody's watching. So if the members were watching,
and they were,
and perhaps the pastor did say something, perhaps that the members never heard him say, and quite naturally, that was driven from the conversations of the panelists. So I do believe that there are some in the congregation would probably say, I really can't believe he's up there. I never heard him say all of that. I'm just listening. I can't wait till they get back to church, and I'm going to ask him about some of that he said up there on that podium.
That's pretty common. Again, being a layman, that the congregation of people in the church will confront you about certain things they hear you say and do in public.
Well, not so much as what. Well, I'm not going to be confronted.
Right.
Okay. I'm not going to be confronted because this has been my life. Okay, so it's not like something new for me, and it's kind of like
Primarily because you're black congregation.
Mixed congregation.
Okay.
Okay, so like John Maxwell said, he says if you think that you are a leader, and you look behind you and there's no one following you, you're not a leader. Okay, so I have a congregation of members who are following, and what I'm doing is it relates to work in the community, the work of justice.
Social justice.
Yes, sir. And so what they saw tonight from me is the norm.
Yeah,
Same question here, yeah.
I think for our other brothers of maybe Caucasian or
White.
Latin white, it might be a shocker for them to actually engage in this conversation because they haven't had to until something like this has happened. So a lot of them are being forced to go down inside and find out what is my theological construct on justice, because I've never had to deal with it. It's almost that privilege that I've had. So for those of us who are of African descent or black, this is the lane that we drive in every day. This is the river that we swim in. But I think some of our people who are watching will probably be surprised to see that we're willing to say it in the presence of other people and not just in the comfort of a homogeneous group.
Right.
And so for me, the people who attend our church, we have a multi-ethnic church, by the way. We have white, Hispanic, whatever. They know my position on things because I make it very clear. And so I think but as pastors, we cannot be afraid to speak to what's right, because the kingdom culture supersedes any culture or subculture. And so for me, Lee, I love these type of conversations for the simple fact that it begins to move people to a place they never thought they can go, white or black. And I'll say this real quickly. We as black folks as well, we have to check our racism as well.
I was trying to ease that in, that things go both ways.
Yeah,
You know,
I heard you say
I didn't know
that.
if I was phrasing it right, but I was trying to squeeze it in edgewise.
Yeah, because we have our own
That's
prejudices as well.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and so we have to check that at the door, right, Dr. Anderson?
Yeah.
So this is a reciprocal experience. So it's not just they have to come to us. We have to learn about them as well.
Right.
Why do they think the way they think, and how some of the things that we're formed as a result of seeing them.
Yeah.
Let me say this too, that you bring that up. When Dr. Anderson said, hey, they never really had to be in that kind of setting to have that kind of dialogue out in public. So that takes me back to the TV show I host. You guys see me, I've been doing it for a long time. Okay. And I'm always on television Sunday mornings, 8:30, moving around with different cultures, different people all the time in a way that my community can be proud. Hey, Lee is representing us, okay. But when I first started doing this show, I knew this, Pastor Anderson, that these various white people that would be coming on the show who've been leaders in the corporations that they're in, leaders in this community organizations that they're in, the churches and what have we, politicians and so on, that would be their first time on in public, having to be eye to eye with a black person, particularly here in Fort Myers area, eye to eye with a black person, asking them questions that are germane to our community, and they got to answer it in public. So it's that same concept. They never had to do it in public. And now the TV cameras are rolling. That was before social media, before all of that. I was out there asking those types of questions in a nice diplomatic way, but having them address them in public. Today we went around and we go, what does Black Lives Matter means to you? They had to address it in public. And how do you think the responses were in general to that?
Well, I think
you said black. You need to separate two things, right?
Well, I think the question was asked about my thoughts about Black Lives Matter, and should we disconnect from the political aspect of it? And the political aspect of it, we certainly do. But I believe the conversation was good around the board, hearing even the Caucasian pastors talk about Black Matters Live, because they gave us their perspective of it as we gave them perspective of ours. And basically, I kind of summed up that it basically is kingdom driven. It's kingdom driven, where we're all human beings and all humans matter. All humans matter. God created us equal, so therefore, black men shouldn't be treated no less than a white man. Okay, so it kind of goes like this. When I had a revival. It was back in 1985. I had a revival. So one of the professors I shared, we was in revival, come be with me. So the professor came, and the next day at school, he says, Rickey, I really enjoyed revival. I really did. So I said to him, I'm going to pay you a visit. Okay. He said, looks at me like this. He said, no. Now, I have no problem with worshiping with African Americans, but my congregation, they're not here yet. I looked at him, and this is 1985. And I said, well, I'm not going to create no problems for you. I'm not coming, so don't look for me. Really? So, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Wow. The, oh, man, that was heavy. Oh, you could hear a pin fall when you start getting into what is the church. So you go, man, this church and there's that church. I'm going to allow you to do that right now on camera. I was like, whoa, this is getting good. Go ahead. Because that's when we went into free for all.
Well, I wanted to clarify the reality.
That's right.
And not the idealism. In their mind, there is one church. But in our reality, there are two churches. And I always want to make that clear when they said the church. I know what the Bible says about the church, but I'm not talking about the theological construct. I'm talking about the ecclesiastic setup. Mm-hmm. So there's two churches. There is the white church in America, and there is the black church. When they use the word evangelical in the context of the media or whatever, they are not referring to all born-again Christians. They are referring to white born-again Christians.
Okay.
Okay.
You're evangelical.
But I'm an evangelical.
Okay.
What they would refer to me as, you probably didn't know this term, is a neo-evangelical.
Really?
A neo-evangelical is someone who comes from the black experience, but has studied in a predominantly white institution and runs a church with some of those ideals where it's not totally black. Mm-hmm. It's not totally, like, for example, Dr. Tony Evans would be considered neo, and that's why, if you notice the panelists, he said when we wanted to find out, we went to Dr. Tony Evans because he's a safe black guy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And some other guys that they would call neo-evangelical, which is good, and they've been able to bridge the divide between the white and the black. So a white person would see Dr. Tony Evans as a non-threat to their theology. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Whereas they probably come to Dr. Glover, no, he's too much on that social justice or justice point. So I don't know if you ever heard that term, neo-evangelical.
No, this is interesting to me.
Yeah, and
so it actually has a name.
Yeah, so that's kind of like a hybrid, someone who is of the black experience, but they don't promote the black angry agenda.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned evangelical.
Yeah.
I want to come to you, Dr. Anderson, just using the word neo in general, not evangelical. That particular Christian would be group or however.
That would be a group of people who study.
That's a denomination.
No, it's not. It's just a term that they would use.
No, evangelical is a denomination.
Evangelicals are seen as people who came away from Catholicism. Okay. So, for example, when you have when the church was one church, right? Then you had Martin Luther that did the Reformation, and then you had what we call the evangelicals, which separated from the Catholics, because Catholics consider themselves as Christians, but they're not evangelical, which means born again, believing that Jesus Christ is the only way to salvation. So, the term evangelical identifies a group of people who are born again, profess Jesus Christ as the only way to heaven, hold the Bible as authority.
Would you be considered evangelical?
Yes.
Okay, so you would be neo.
Yes.
No, Dr. Anderson wouldn't be neo-evangelical.
No, I wouldn't.
He wouldn't be neo. Neo-evangelical is someone who is, let's say, for example, someone who they're black, but their theology is not pro-black theology, like the social gospel. So they'll be considered neo-evangelical. That, like, for example, a neo-evangelical could pastor a white church, and they'd be okay with it to a certain degree.
Okay.
Because he doesn't hoop, he doesn't holler.
Just lecture.
He's a teacher. He's more calm, more
And a Catholic would be what?
Catholic.
That would nothing to do with evangelism.
No.
Yeah. Sorry, Lee, I didn't mean to give you a whole.
I'm trying to get this
whole lesson
for a
on
minute. Okay, so I grew up in the holiest Pentecostal.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up reading the Bible like I should have, Mom. I know I'm embarrassing you here, but I did go to church. The holiness Pentecostal. Are we evangelical?
Some of them say they are.
Okay. And some are not.
Yeah.
Well, you'd be considered charismatic.
Okay.
You'd be considered charismatic, which falls into the line of otherness, right? So within the whole, that's what I'm saying. When we talk about the church, it's a whole nother conversation because within the Christian church, there are these subgroups, these subcultures, right? So, for example, you are a charismatic church, so that means we have to stay away from because you're not mainstream evangelical. And so when they do these researches like Barna or whoever does these polling, they are not going to ethnic churches.
That's what you said, right?
They're going to predominantly mega white churches, mostly Southern Baptist, Nazarene, right? Probably the Vineyard, and they're polling these people because that's the demographic that they poll. They don't go to ethnic churches.
You're getting right to where I wanted to get before I wrap this up. When you say that here in 2020, you are certainly saying that within the church, there is so many divisions, which we can also call lines of racism.
Absolutely. Well, I call it spiritual racism.
Okay.
Where I don't get along with you because you speak in tongues and I don't speak in tongues, or you do baptism by immersion, I do it by sprinkling, and so there's all these isms, like Dr. Glover says,
isms.
right? And so, and even within the black community,
Correct.
Even within the black community, you have sophisticated blacks who think they do theology a certain way because they don't hoop. They don't holler. They do it more of a European style, and they feel like they're more. That's the way to do it. So,
Me, I like some drums, some pianos, some guitar. I like
because you're holiness.
Listen, Lee. I'm a teacher.
I can't relate
I'm a
to it.
teacher, but I need somebody to talk back to me when I'm preaching.
Okay.
Like I can't. Like I'm a professor, right? I teach at a university, so I'm a teacher. But when I'm preaching, and the message is good. I need some folks talking back to me. I want the keyboard to go off every now and then, because that's what I grew up with. That's my culture, and I'm not going to deny that. Okay, so
racism, justice, the Christian
church.
What a topic, huh?
Yeah.
When you first saw that topic, what went through your mind?
Oh, Dr. Glover. Dr. Glover.
Dr. Glover can come up with them.
Yeah.
When I first saw it, I was like, wow, where are we going to go with this one? And we went there, too.
Well, my thoughts was, something that exists, and we're not going to tiptoe around it. We're going to hit it head on. Because racism really, the average church don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like it doesn't exist. I was talking with a Caucasian, my next door neighbor, yesterday, and he said to me, he says, racism isn't as bad as it used to be years ago. I said, excuse me? I say, you mean to tell me what we see now, it's not as bad as it was years ago? No. I say it's worse.
Yeah.
Because back then we didn't see a whole lot of it. See, subtle racism was around for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Subtle. It was racist, but it was subtle. It is no longer, we don't see subtle racism much anymore. Racism, I mean, it's blatant. It's right there before your eyes. Don't try to hide it. I mean, and in the average church, the pastors don't want to talk about it.
I know that Pastor Glover goes around now, and he's involved in a lot of different seminars, and he's called on to be the expert on the topic. But in general, this is my first time seeing something like this. I'm not in you guys' world. Something like this that we just experienced tonight, discussing race out loud with white ministers and black ministers and Hispanic. Is this commonplace now? Are these types of things happening in your world, or is this kind of rare?
I think what Dr. Glover has done is began what we call a new normal for the church.
Okay.
In the same way that coronavirus has created a new normal, We're creating a new normal. So this is not common, but it's necessary.
Right.
And I think that if we can continue to model this, like I said earlier in the panel, this can be a template for the rest of the country to follow. So let's not minimize the power of this moment, because this doesn't happen. Even in denominations that have different cultures, but the majority culture is afraid to have these conversations because it makes them uncomfortable and it threatens the backbone, which is the bottom line. Lee, let me say this real quick, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this. The bottom line that drives most pastors and most churches, affluent churches, is the budget. It's not the Bible. And I'm not going to mess with my donor base for the sake of the Bible. And if we can flip those two B's to make the Bible dominate the budget, God will take care of the budget.
Oh, yes, he will.
And that's the fear, Lee.
Yes, he will.
I've worked in major denominations, and I know what goes on in the kitchen.
But it sounds like still going over to you, Reverend Anderson, as we wrap this up. I keep saying as we wrap this up. I've been here. You guys would be surprised to know I've been here since like 4 o'clock. Yeah. So when Pastor Glover, I'm working from. But sounds almost like a pastor has to have a little bit of almost like a politician based on what he's saying. You have to monitor how it's going to affect your voters.
Voters?
Right, not turn off the voters by what you say and do. When he was saying, the members, what was that? You were saying that the budget.
It's the budget. It's driven by the budget.
So I'm thinking the budget is the voters.
Yeah. Okay, the members voting on the budget. Yeah. Okay. So basically, if you have a person who's considered to be a heavy giver, the average pastor, as he said, is more prone to tiptoe, be real reluctant to say certain things, because if they say certain things and this donor says, what I heard you say Sunday, I'm cutting all ties of my giving, and they do this. Okay, but if that pastor would stand on the word of God, do what the word of God say, God's going to take care of the rest. Okay, so don't have to tiptoe around it.
Okay, I see. Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. And let's give you an opportunity to say something, both of you, something to Mount Hermon Ministries.
Well, first of all, I've always said this is my 4th symposium. Dr. Glover and his wife, First Lady Cheryl, they always do a first-class job of putting this together. And I think God has raised up Mount Hermon Ministries for such a time as this. And I think when they picked their slogan, Redeeming Influence, they didn't know it was prophetic. And what is happening right now is that redeeming influence is becoming exponential. And so to the members and the leaders of Mount Hermon Ministries, I want to let you guys know that we stand with you, that we are partners, we're not competitors. And whatever we can do to shoulder what you're doing, count us in.
You said take this on the road. You got the technology to do this at your church?
Oh, we do.
We may
ready.
Come on the road.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You and Pastor Glover's are buddies from a long time.
Oh, yes. Pastor Glover and I, we go way back. Matter of fact, what Pastor Glover is doing now that I'm a part of, I could remember him we were having a conversation, and he talked about his self-interest. And self-interest, it's like, this guy's selfish. This guy is selfish. I can't believe he's saying his self-interest, until I went to a workshop and they dealt with self-interest. And I say, Pastor wasn't selfish. He basically was dealing with something that he was interested in, and he knew that there was others that were interested in the same thing. So that becomes a self-interest. So what I have seen him do for our community, I've seen God birth things through Dr. Glover to not get the support that he should get from peers. Matter of fact, well, since you say speak to Mount Hermon, I'm speaking to Mount Hermon and everybody else that's watching. Well, if God puts something in Dr. Field's heart, if he births something, what we need to do is support it. Okay? If God puts something in Dr. Glover's heart, just support it. And so I am a supporter. I don't have to birth it. to be a supporter. So I've been supporting Mount Hermon Ministries and everything that Dr. Glover and Cheryl Glover has been doing down through the years. And so I'm going to continue to do it because I do know that God has a hand on Mount Hermon Ministry. God is blessing Dr. Glover, and he's going to go higher and higher because there is no way that you,
Man, this is great.
there's no way that you can just all of a sudden say, okay, I'm going to pull some panelists together. When I think about the symposium, there have been several symposiums, and you have to be a well-respected man in the community to have some of the panelists to come and be on a panel at a symposium.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so we have to give honor to whom honor is due. And so I want to honor Dr. Glover for everything that he's doing. And as he said tonight, his wife, she makes everything look so nice when we come. It just looks so good. And so they're a good team together. And so
she has me some sanitizer every time. I come in, they leave, you see the sanitizer, I see them.
Yeah, so they're a good team together. And my prayers are with them to just keep soaring.
Okay. I think I already had you at Mitchell coming. And I'll close this down with this. You guys see me here every time. And what Pastor Anderson just said is so profound. You probably take it for granted that I'm here. I don't come out and cover people things like this. I'm a busy guy. It's hard to get Lee Pitts Live at your event. Every time Pastor Glover gives me a date, I'm like, hey, let me check my calendar. Because the respect, what you were talking about, you know he just is moving the community forward. You want to be a part of it. And every time it's better and better, just world class. So we praising you, Pastor Glover, while you're still alive, giving you your roses.
That's right.
And
that's right. Wow.
Yeah, keep on calling me, man. I'll be out here with the TV show. Half sleep right now. I'm gonna go get some sleep. Thanks for y'all for hanging around. Can y'all just come get on camera for a second? Just be seen before I wrap it up. Come on, just get on camera. Get on camera. All right. Y'all come get on camera. We giving you your praise. Come sit right here, Pastor Glover. Just sit right here. Come on, Pastor Glover. No, you're on camera. This I know. When I stand up, I'm off camera. All right. Can you sit in that lap right there? Sit in that lap. They're low enough for that camera. All right. What we want to say, I know we want. Go ahead and say something, Pastor Anderson, to this couple, to this couple.
Well, I guess Lee feeling the spirit. I guess he finished it. Well, basically, Dr. Glover, I said this to my wife the other day. I don't know what it is about churches. You have to be dead before they can acknowledge you've done something good. And I'm sure you've seen different halls named after a person after they die. Well, there's a song that says, "Give me my flowers while I yet live." So to you and to Cheryl, matter of fact, prophetically, and I don't know whether Cheryl ever told you. Did you ever tell Cheryl what I told you? You never shared it? When I was taking pictures for the Girl Scouts, I said to Cheryl, Cheryl, you're going to be Dr. Glover's wife. Who, me? Not, you never told her? Not, she said, not me. I say, watch and see. And so after,
we have trouble.
Don't come to me.
Something.
So after y'all got married, I say, Cheryl, what did I tell you? In other words, you know prophetically when God speaks. Okay, so God was speaking prophetically, and it came into being. And I have seen Cheryl grow. I've seen you grow. I've seen the heart. You have the heartbeat of God, and I want you to continue, because as you continue with the heartbeat of God, remember you're going to have some naysayers. You're going to have some haters. You're going to have someone to say he think he runs everything. But when God speaks to you, you remember obedience is better than sacrifice.
Well, I know Cheryl's probably tired.
Killing that knee and killing that chair.
I'm going to go quick.
5 minutes. 5 minutes left.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to this wonderful couple, because I know value and I see value, and both of you are valuable. And what I love about the ministry and Dr. Glover and First Lady Cheryl is you're selfless and you are community oriented. I have never asked you guys to do something at Agape that you've said no. And same thing here with Mount Hermon. And so I appreciate the partnership that we have and the friendship that we share. And I believe that God is just getting started with you guys.
Oh, yeah.
And if I can be a part of what God is doing with you, I count it a privilege. And people say we look alike. I'm like, man, yeah. People say you guys look, and you guys almost preach the same way. So, yeah. So there's a lot we have. So I love both of you, and Cheryl, thank you for being part of what we do on Facebook Live all the time, and I just love you guys.
Okay, we're going to just have to leave it with that. They can hear me on TV. I'm off camera. I don't want to mess that up. This is the way we should be leaving it. It wasn't rehearsed. Giving people their glory in public, and that's what we want to see. Yep. We'll see you next time on Lee Pitts Live.
Lee Pitts Live is a Lee Pitts Enterprise production.
Hello, Southwest Florida. Thanks for watching Lee Pitts Live. Of course, I'm Lee Pitts. I hope you enjoy that particular show, but you can always catch us here on YouTube. Just click on the subscribe button down there. That way you can get your Lee Pitts Live on demand when you want it and how you want it. We also encourage you to watch our show on Fox 4 and connect with us on all our social media platforms. Just type in Lee Pitts Live.